Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Jeremy Blair.
And I'm Rain Wayland. Jeremy, I have a question for you, buddy.
Yeah.
Are you a cop?
You gonna stop doing drug deals with a jerk-off fucking cousin? Yeah, no, I'm not a cop.
I think that's one of my favorite bits in How I Met Your Mother. That Ted and Marshall really love the movie we're talking about today, but that's all they quote to one another. It's like, "Are you a cop?"
Yeah, no, I remember that. Are you a cop? I'm not a cop. Anyway, so, all right, before we get started, I have to gush about a show. Because I rewatched a show recently. I had seen it before. I watched it all the way through again recently, and it is one of the greatest shows that I've seen. It is BoJack Horseman, and on the surface, I think, okay, so when I say BoJack Horseman, people who haven't seen it have probably seen like still images of it or whatever, and they're like, that weird cartoon horse show. And
or they probably know like the memes,
yeah, or the TikToks now with the sound. But okay, let me set the record straight. BoJack Horseman is incredible. Not only is it the funniest show that one of the funniest shows I've ever seen, but it slowly evolves into one of the saddest, most profound pieces of drama that I've ever seen. It is, the show hides its premise from you. It guides you along what you think is going to be this silly, fun, clever show about anthropomorphic animals and humans on their misadventures, right? In Hollywood. But it slowly becomes... Hollywood. Well, eventually. But that's my point. Because in the first episode, BoJack breaks his coffee table. In the second episode, it's still broken. And so now the audience is now expecting something completely different than what they're used to with shows like this. Normally, shows like this wipe the slate clean every episode, and, we start anew, and every person that BoJack wrongs, every bad decision he makes that affects someone else, isn't wiped away at the beginning of the next episode. They linger and they continue. And what I love about the show is that each decision BoJack makes, or each life he affects, or each person he wrongs, or every bad decision he makes, there are consequences up front, but the show doesn't linger on them for too long. But over time, those decisions, those mistakes, those actions that BoJack does affects people long term, and it affects him long term, and it's about consequence, and it's him grappling with his ego, his narcissism, his trauma, his issues. Incredible show. I can't recommend it enough. Please watch BoJack Horseman. It is so good.
When we were talking, when you told me you'd finish it again, you kind of let me in that I made it pretty far.
You made it pretty far.
When you said it was season 4, when we meet Polly, right? Who he thinks is his daughter, but revealed to be his sister.
Spoilers. Yes.
Spoilers, everyone. And I was sold on the show from the jump. Like, I remember hearing about it. I'm a big fan of Will Arnett, so I'm like, anything he's in, I'm sold. Like, I think I watched the first trailer that Netflix put out, and I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need any more. Like, you've got a viewer. I will say, though, I was picking up on the the drama aspect of the show pretty quickly. And for me, it was very blatant with the Chrissy Lynn episode.
Yes.
I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought this was supposed to be a comedy. And yeah, it made me fall in love with the show even more. I also started to rewatch it right around the time I started at my new job, which I think we mentioned on camera. Maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe we shouldn't.
Anyway. But I actually mentioned while I was in training, because one of our trainers was like, "Oh, is anyone watching any shows?" And I said BoJack Horseman, just because that was what I was rewatching at the time. And I got a few people who were like, "Oh yeah," I could see them on camera. They were like, "Oh yeah." Other people were kind of like, "What is that?" And our trainer was like, "Rain, what is BoJack Horseman?" And so I had to come off a mute and I had to be like, "Well, it's." In simplest terms, it's an adult animated show, comedy, but also a drama, more a drama than a comedy. And they were like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." It was like, it's really good.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the depths they go, the amount of despair that is in the show. I mean, it subverts your expectations, and in the best of ways. I think it is one of the best shows that Netflix has ever done, bar none. I mean, it's up there with Mindhunter for me. I mean, it's incredible.
Now, here's a question: did you ever watch the spinoff show that they did?
No.
Which looks like it's just a straight comedy.
Yeah, no, because the way it ended was perfect, and so I couldn't. I won't even. I don't think I could watch anything with that same animation style because I will correlate
associate it.
Yeah, I'll associate it with BoJack, and I can't do that. BoJack's over, so I can't.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'll probably jump back into my rewatch because I'd made it to season 2 when they were filming the Secretariat.
Oh, yeah, Secretariat.
Movie. That BoJack. That's all he wanted to play Secretariat. And I think I made it to middle of that season.
Cool.
And then I just kind of got caught up with other shows that were coming out.
Sure.
And other shows I was rewatching, and so I'll probably get back into BoJack, and I'll probably just do a clean slate, start it back from season 1, and finally finish it. Now, since you had that, I do want to talk about this because I told you I was going to mention it. So Ashley and I on Saturday, we did this thing at Synergy called All Access Day. Excuse me. I don't know if it's like an annual thing they do, or if it's just like like we're gonna have this special event. Like, I don't know if it comes and goes. I really don't know. But it was $25 per person, and we got 2 movies of our choice, unlimited games, unlimited attractions. So like, we went to the Odessa Synergy because they have bowling. So we got bowling for technically $25. But we could bowl as much as we want. All we had to pay for was our bowling shoes. The only thing we had to pay out of pocket for was our food, of course, and little superfluous things here and there. But the 2 movies we decided to see was Here from Robert Zemeckis' new film, and We Live in Time. As we were talking about off camera, Here was fine. I was really like crossing my fingers, like, please Zemeckis, like give us a knockout, because I think we can all be honest with ourselves here. He has not made a really good film in quite some time, which is disappointing. His last movie before this was that god-awful live-action Pinocchio movie for Disney. I got about 5 minutes into that, and I was like, yep, and I'm done. Done with that. Yeah. But Here was fine. Like I mentioned off mic, it was the execution. That's what I was worried about the most. I was like, I don't think he's going to be able to pull this concept of the camera never moving and it stays placed, and all we're seeing is this field of vision. I don't think he'll be able to pull that off. And he kind of did, but like the over-reliance on de-aging, the over-reliance on not moving the camera much, and then like there was a little bit of social commentary thrown in there, which I felt like was a little bit out of place. Like it was a nice sequence, but I was just like, we haven't established any other social commentary before this. But anyway, so on the whole, it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to sugarcoat it, I didn't technically pay for the movie,
Sure.
so there we go.
That's good.
But we live in time. Different story. We Live in Time was phenomenal. It wasn't as devastating as I thought it was going to be. When I saw the first trailer, I was like, this movie is going to destroy your heart.
Sure.
It's not that devastating, but it does have a kind of a gut punch, but it's so well acted, it's so well written, the nonlinear storytelling is fantastic, and Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield's chemistry, top notch.
Cool.
Ashley and I both said that they need to be in more movies together because their chemistry was just, it was off the charts.
Cool.
It almost made me feel like we saw the movie in 4DX when they were having all their sex scenes. And they have about 3 or 4 sex scenes.
That's a lot. It's more than you would expect.
Yeah. Granted, the most graphic one happens at the beginning of the movie. And it's not even that graphic necessarily.
Sure.
So, but no, it was great. It was phenomenal. I gave that one a 4 on my letterbox. I gave Here 3, but We Live in Time was awesome. Yeah. So anyone who listened, yeah, definitely check out BoJack Horseman. Definitely check out We Live in Time. And if you want to see Here, great. That's fine. We don't care.
I care a little.
But with that being said, so Jeremy, what are we talking about today?
All right. Today,
since we already gave people a little bit of a hint.
Today we are discussing Martin Scorsese's Academy Award-winning remake, The Departed.
In our tease last week, I didn't see this movie until I think we were in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Which by then that movie was already about 3 or 4 years old. Yeah,
I probably saw it around the same time. I was probably a freshman or sophomore in high school.
Yeah, and like I said last week, I remember my mom watching it and yelling at the end of the movie, of course, with the very tragic ending of what happens to Billy, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. And that always just stuck with me. So I remember when I finally decided to watch it, I was like, okay, well, because I didn't know what happened. I just heard her yell out.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, something happens to Billy at the end of the movie. And dude,
yeah,
I still wasn't prepared for that. Like, even now, having seen this movie multiple times, I was still like, God damn it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Yeah, same. Yeah.
Now, I want to say, you told me years ago, even though you love this movie, you felt like this shouldn't have gotten Martin the Academy Award.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or were you saying it was for something else?
I mean, it kind of seems like a makeup because, of course, it's great. This movie's phenomenal and it's insanely entertaining. It's compelling. It's tense. It's a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
But Scorsese missed out on so many Oscars throughout his career that it's sort of like here you go. It's like when Denzel won for Training Day. Training Day is incredible. Glory, his performance in Glory is better, but he didn't get it for Glory.
Agreed.
So
yeah, agreed.
It's sort of like, hey, sorry about that. Here you go.
Well, would you say it's the same thing for Leo and The Revenant?
Yes. Even though I would say that that's almost, it's obviously justified. I mean, the lengths that this man went through for The Revenant is insane. But yeah, I would say that it's sort of like okay, fine, here you go.
Yeah, and if y'all want to listen to that, we did do an episode on The Revenant with our buddy Alex, so you can listen to that after you listen to this.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I felt like, well-deserved Academy Award win, of course. But he should have won it for other movies also.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel.
Well, and I'll say this before we really do our job. Rewatching this movie for the first time in quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's been since I've rewatched this movie. It doesn't feel like a Martin Scorsese movie, you know?
You don't think so?
And not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean that negatively. I just, like with all the other movies we've done for the show, The Irishman, Casino, Raging Bull, Casino. Did I already say Casino?
Yeah, Goodfellas.
Yeah, I said Casino. Goodfellas. Silence. All those films sort of had a bit of a, Martin Scorsese. He's touched it,
mm-hmm.
And the whole time, again, rewatching this, I was like, I'm still so baffled that this is a Martin Scorsese movie.
Well, I see what you mean. I mean, I disagree, but I see what you mean. I think his influence is, of course, to me, all over it. Beginning with the music. The music is 100% Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
Because he's used, like, the Rolling Stones has got to be one of his favorite bands. He also did a documentary about the Rolling Stones. He directed one of those as well. But yeah, Gimme Shelter he's used a few times. I think this is one of the best times it's been used in one of his films. In terms of just tone and context, I really liked the way he used it this time. But yeah, no, I feel like this one is when I think he started doing a little bit more in the editing. The editing in this movie, first off, won an Academy Award, but the editing in this film is bananas. It is all over the place. And because there's like jump cuts, but in the same shot, so we're not jumping to a different shot, we're jumping within the shot. We do that several times. Music cuts out in the middle of a lyric. It'll, fade in and then, immediately abruptly end. It's nuts. I mean, you have that Irish shot of Sullivan when he's about to go into the police department when he first starts. And that's super unique and different. And of course the iris expands for the full shot. Which sort of takes you aback a bit because it's, so unique and so different. It's sort of a silent movie trick. But yeah. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, The Departed. Okay?
Well, before you go, and I also forgot, we've done Hugo as well. Oh. I always forget that he directed a kids movie. Anyway, proceed, my friend.
So The Departed. The Departed follows really two main central characters, Billy Costigan and Sullivan, Colin Sullivan. Both are technically in the police department, and both are kind of technically also in the mob. So Billy Costigan is a police cadet that gets a position in the undercover unit to go undercover in the mob. They have to scrub his record. They have to arrest him for a crime. He has to serve time. And then he has to slowly make his way into the mob and find his way in front of Costello, played by Jack Nicholson in one of his most iconic performances. Then you have Colin Sullivan, who is a police cadet that ends up being a state police detective. However, he is undercover for the mob, for Costello. They have connected since Colin was a child, and he has slowly been brought up in Costello's crime syndicate. And so now we have a fun cat and mouse game where we have these two moles, these two rats, in the police department and in the mob, and we are trying to take down the mob while simultaneously trying to catch the rat in the police department, and the mob is trying to catch the rat in their crime syndicate. It is compelling storytelling. Each and every scene is filled with tension because each and every scene is filled with deception. And it makes for some incredible watching. So, all right. So blah blah blah. That's The Departed. So, something I love about this film, and it kicks. I mean, the film goes pretty quickly, and there's not a lot of downtime, and there's really no lulls in the story. It is just full plot, full steam ahead. It's all interesting. And again, it has to do with that, I think, that fast-paced editing style as well. That again won an Academy Award. I think it's interesting when editing wins an, I don't know, especially like this. Editing like this is interesting because it's meant to be noticed. But okay. Billy Costigan.
Okay.
We can start with Billy Costigan.
I was like, where are we going to start?
We can start with Billy. Billy Costigan. And I do enjoy this sort of exposition where he's in the job interview with, I think we became best friends when we saw him on the film set, but with Martin Sheen. So with Queen and Dignam, Dignam is Mark Wahlberg is just unhinged. This guy is a cartoon, but he's hilarious. So I like this back and forth with Costigan, with Queen, and with Dignam, because we're finding out a lot about Costigan, and it doesn't really seem that forced because they're trying to figure out if he's a good fit, and here's why he wouldn't be, but here's why he would be, right? So the fact that his dad was lower socioeconomic class and his mom was higher, upper socioeconomic class, and so he would go back and forth between his parents, who are, allegedly, or, they insinuate that they're divorced. And he would go back and forth to these households, and they say that he has to be two different people when he goes to these places. He can't drop his R's and be, thuggish with his mom. But he doesn't want to be sort of upper class preppy when he's with his dad. And so he has to learn how to change who he is depending on his surroundings. Right? And they mentioned how smart he is, which they mentioned his SAT scores, which were high, I guess.
140, I think.
1400, because it's on a 1600 scale.
Yeah.
So 1400 is high. I mean, I guess I didn't take the SAT. I don't know, but I like that. And then you're sort of like, oh man, is he a good fit? Yeah. And what is it going to mean for him to be this far undercover? Like, what does that look like? And I love that, we cut to him in the prison, and he's, actually serving time. And I think they said 8 months or something like that, something crazy. Yeah. And just the way people talk to one another, the way they mention family members, the way I can't tell if this is a cultural thing, if this is a regional thing, or if this is an expositional thing. I can't tell, which I guess is a good thing, because it doesn't seem super forced. To me, it seems unusual because I'm not from that area, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, but I feel like there's other examples of of like movies taking place in Boston where they seem to like kind of know everyone and know your family,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
that's true.
So maybe it might be, kind of regional. But I don't know.
Well, especially in that world, if they're, sort of, if they sort of have a knack for, the crime end of it all, I suppose that, that life is sort of smaller. So people do seem to know one another because, they're all involved in the same illegal activities. Um, but what I love also is the difference of how the film shows the two of them. So we have Costigan, who's sort of timid. He's sort of this straight laced, he's almost militaristic when he's first in the academy, and especially when he goes into Queenan's office. I mean, he's standing up straight like he's a soldier. It's very bizarre. And you have Sullivan there, which I love that they cross paths several times throughout the film, and they just don't even know.
Yeah.
That he's just this cool, hip, I don't know, cool guy. I don't know. Like, he's just, people like him. He's charismatic. He's just cool. People really like him. And he doesn't seem like a total dork like like Costigan. And so I like that that difference between the two of them, because that sort of seems how Sullivan climbs the ranks so quickly, is people just like him. And he seems to be good at what he does, while still giving information to Costello. But I've been talking for too long. What do you got?
No, you're fine. No, you're fine, bro. No, I agree. I forgot that Billy and Colin cross paths at the very beginning of the movie. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, of course, this is before, we already know that Colin is a mole for Costello, right. But, Billy hasn't gotten the assignment yet. But still, it's so crazy that they were right there, right next to each other.
Yeah.
And, such an integral, again, like you said, cat and mouse game that we're about to go on with these two characters. So something I really liked is just like we've talked about before, in previous Martin Scorsese gangster movies, is the mob is fun until it isn't. Because I feel like this movie, especially coming from Colin's perspective, the mob does look very fun. He's getting, he's making a lot of money to afford a nice apartment. He's, really reaping the benefits of having mob connections. But I feel like where like other of Martin's gangster films, he lets us know pretty quickly in this one, the mob is fun until it's not very early on. As where I would say with, Goodfellas and, Casino, The Irishman, we take a minute to learn that lesson. It's almost like with this one, Scorsese was really like letting us know, like, hey, it's fun till it's not, and it's not fun anymore. And I think the reason why he pulls that off so well is having the leader of this Irish mob be played by Jack Nicholson.
And have him be psychotic.
True. Yeah. It's like if Kubrick, what Kubrick was doing with him in The Shining, and Martin was like, you have no reins, do whatever you want.
Yeah, what if Jack Torrance was the head of the mob? Yeah, you're right, because he's absolutely insane. There are several moments, and it's funny you say you have no reins, because Scorsese would kind of just let him do whatever you want.
Really?
they said that they really had to like DiCaprio and Damon would really have to stay on their toes because they didn't know what he was going to do or say half the time. And so obviously the severed hand thing is scripted because they have to have a prop, right? And so, but that's an example of sort of his unpredictability and his sort of his psychopathy, because he's just holding that severed hand and he's having a casual conversation. And the way DiCaprio's acting in this is incredible because he is so scared and he is so shocked by what he's saying, but he's trying to keep it as cool as he can because he's also wearing a wire in that moment. And it kind of feels like moments in American Psycho where you feel like Willem Dafoe knows everything that Patrick Bateman is doing. You kind of in these scenes think that Costello knows that Costigan's the rat, and he's just toying with him. But of course, you feel that way because you have the burden of knowledge of knowing that he's the rat, and so everything strange or everything violent or anything that Costello does out of anger or anything like that, you feel is malicious. You feel is coming out of a place of knowledge that he knows that Costigan is the rat, but that's not true. He's just insane. He's just, a sadist, and he's just been doing this for so long that, he just feels like he's untouchable, and he kind of is. And we'll find out why later.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned untouchable because I also forgot about this detail. The film begins in, I think, like the 80s, and he's being super gross with that supermarket's daughter, supermarket owner's daughter, Gwen. And then later on, when we're in the present following all this, he's married to her.
Is it the same woman?
Coleman? I believe so, because I want to say that shopkeeper's daughter's name was Gwen.
It's Carmen.
And
in the beginning, that's her name. It's Carmen, yeah.
Okay. Never mind. I thought for sure. I was like, oh man, did he groom this little girl?
No, although I wouldn't put it past him, but no.
But okay, never mind. That kind of gets rid of that because I was just like, I was like, I cannot believe.
But that brings up a really interesting dichotomy because Costello is hypersexual. Costello that's all he wants to do, even though he claims that he doesn't need it, but he likes it, right?
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, you have Colin Sullivan, who is alluded to be impotent. And it's that weird dichotomy of, and this weird yin and yang of Costello being so hypersexual and Colin almost being asexual.
His protege is the complete opposite.
Right. I thought that was an interesting choice, and I believe it was Jack Nicholson's choice for him to be so hypersexual because I think in the script he was sort of like a post-sexual older man, and he was like, no, this guy.
Well, this guy can't keep it dry.
That's right.
I will say. So this is the last thing I'm going to say before we can get off this gross train of thought.
All right.
My favorite thing that he says to Gwen, and it's so funny, is it's kind of towards middle-ish, endish part of the movie, and she says something to him, I can't remember, and then he just points at her, very animated, and is like, "You shut your fucking mouth," and like, and she's kind of like turned on by that, and I'm like, this shouldn't be funny, but it's really funny.
No, it is funny. It was sort of over the top. I know exactly what scene you're talking about. I've seen this movie probably 20 times. which is why I keep jumping back and forth around, because it's just like to me, it's all happening at the same time.
Well, and I'm really glad you said that, because I completely forgot that this movie takes place over about a year or so.
I would say that Costigan is probably undercover for at least a year.
Well, because he says when he meets up with Queen and Diggum, I've been in this for a year now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Like, and because he's at that point in the film, Billy's kind of losing his mind a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Which, I was about to say, understandably, he's seeing all these horrific things, and is probably on edge every second of every day because he doesn't want to get caught.
Yeah.
But yeah, to what you said about it happening all at once, I kind of completely forgot that this happens over the course of a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I love that Scorsese never cues us into that. There's never any title cards 1 year later, that kind of thing.
Right.
He uses dialogue to tell us that.
I think if even he hadn't have done that, if there wasn't that line of dialogue, I feel like we'd understand just by how far he gets in with the mob. I think the way Costigan... Okay. First off, this movie should be commended by how it shows Costigan getting closer and closer to the mob before he's in it, because you think his decisions are sort of erratic and sort of just like he's a hothead who can't, control his temper. But what he's doing is he's choosing to like put up a flag, like, hey, notice me, come get me. Right? Because like in the convenience store, where he beats up those two Italian guys, you think that it's like, why would he go out of his way to do that? That makes no sense. He knows it's going to get Frank's attention if he beats these guys up. And it did. And then, he and French confront him and then bring him in because he has that connection with his uncle, Jackie, right?
Yeah, this is definitely a story of Billy not being a nepo baby,
right? Because I mean, without him doing things like that, without him going out and seeking it, technically, I mean, he wouldn't have gotten it. I mean, because his dad was so straight-laced and had nothing to do with it, because his brother was in it and it killed him, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to make sure we're staying on this, but I do want to talk.
Hard.
No, you're fine. I do want to talk about, because I kind of alluded to it last week in the tease, and you've already started talking about it. Mark Wahlberg's performance as Diggum. I mean, everyone is on their A game this film, but I truly forgot how just fantastic Mark Wahlberg is. I feel like this movie, I know Mark gets a lot of criticisms for not having a good range, but I feel like, just like with Jack Nicholson, he's really let off the reins for this one, and we get to see how actually really good of an actor he is. And of course, he's got some of the best one-liners,
of course,
in the whole movie. My new favorite one, because my favorite one was like, who the fuck are you? I'm the guy that does his job. You must be the other guy.
Yeah,
that one was my favorite one. But now I think my new favorite one is when they're having that debrief, and the FBI agent's like, oh, well, do you have any guys in the field now? And he's like, maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. It's almost like they saved all the one-liners, and they're like, Mark, we know you know what to do with these. And he's like, I got it.
Yeah, he's very bombastic. He's very animated. He's very over the top. but I like it. I think it fits. It works in relation to everybody else. And it's so weird that he is so over the top, yet he's in charge of people that have to stay undercover and, and keep a low profile.
Well, and I did watch a video today that described his character as no nonsense, and I think that's what it is that he's like, because I think you're right, because he's in charge of people who are undercover, so he's like, we're not going to deal with any bullshit. I'm going to just tell it like it is. If you don't like it, then you can fuck off, plain and simple. And if you like it, fine, you're going to listen to me, and we're going to get this done.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason why Billy probably agrees to doing this, because even though I'm sure it pisses him off when Dignam gets onto him or chastises him, I think deep down Billy's like, well, like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Queenan is he's more of a father figure. He's more sympathetic. He understands. Dignam just wants the job done, and he doesn't understand why you just can't do your job. Just like, listen, you asked for this. This is what you're doing. I don't care how hard it is. This is what you wanted, and this is the only way we're getting it done. Queenan, on the other hand, is like, listen, I get it. This is hard. Circumstances have changed. I mean, he's so quick to help Costigan. Like with the wire situation, he can't wear a wire. They will find him and they'll kill him. And so they have to improvise. And Dignam was probably like, well, fuck it. Wear your fucking wire. But, again, Queenan's like, all right, here's what we're looking for. Be on the lookout for these keywords. Let us know. And so I like that relationship that they have.
Yeah.
And of course, it makes it even more devastating later on.
I was just about to say, yeah, man. And I think that's why Scorsese and the writer of the script do such a great job of showing how Queenan really does care about Billy, and like you said, understands kind of what Billy is going through. And then we just get that devastating,
yeah, of course,
scene of Queenan being thrown off the roof and dying, dude.
Yeah. Now,
and
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, what made it worse is that Billy was right there and saw it. Yeah.
So while watching this, Haley was next to me, not paying attention, but she was next to me, and because I was like, listen, you'll like this one. At least you won't hate this one, right? Because it's super fun and it's whatever. There's fun accents, if nothing else. And after a while, she looked up. She goes, "Is everyone undercover? Is every person in the mob an undercover cop?" And I said, no, but that's an interesting point because these guys who are going in undercover are blind. They don't know who else is or who else isn't. So the first time it happens is when Costigan busts that guy's mouth open. And, punches that guy's teeth out. And he's undercover. And you're like, oh, it could literally be anybody. This mission to take down this particular crime syndicate is so intense that they are having multiple officers undercover within this syndicate, right?
And
then, of course, when it happened the second time, Mark Ralston, who we all know from The Shawshank Redemption, he plays Delahunt, but in Shawshank he plays Boggs. I think if you recognize him or not. When he gets shot, at the waterfront, and
after Queenan's death,
after Queenan dies. He gets shot, and you kind of already know that something's up because he told Costigan the wrong address, but of course Costigan was already there. And, you're like, he's like, why didn't I tell anybody? He just wants someone else to know. And he goes, I think I can trust you. I think you are undercover also. And it turns out, well, so is he.
Well, but I'm glad you brought that up, because there's that dialogue when they're watching his body on the news get drug up. Frank says, no, they're only saying he's a cop, so I'll stop looking for the cop.
Yeah, but see, I don't believe that's true, because I do think he is undercover. And here's the only reason why I say that is because Delahunt kept Costigan secret. He could have told him he was conscious. And so he could have told him, and it would have solved everybody's problem. But he didn't, because he knows the importance of being undercover, and he knows that, you know what I mean? The funniest part of that scene is what what's his face, Fitzy, just be like, I can't believe it. How'd they find his body so fast? Yeah, I was like, no, you don't get it, man. Like, I worked really hard on
that. Yeah. For those of you who don't know who that is, that's that guy from Wanted.
It's a deep cut.
And also, and also he's the guy that Harry Potter impersonates in the Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Oh, that's
right. One of those situations of that actor pretending to be Daniel Radcliffe, pretending to be him. Yeah. But yeah, no, that's so funny where he's like no, I buried him deep. Okay.
I mean, because you think he's upset that, his buddy is an undercover cop, but he's not mad about that. He's mad about that they found him so fast, which makes me laugh. I mean, this movie is very funny. Comedy is spewed all over this thing.
Do you think, now hang on, do you think it's because it's taking place in Boston, and Bostonians are naturally, kind of funny and, bombastic, and
if that'll give us more listens in Boston, yes, I will agree with you that, yeah, they're just naturally funny. They're naturally better. Bostonians are just naturally more charismatic and funnier than everybody else.
I mean, look, and their baseball teams, like the Red Sox, man,
can't be beat. Go Sox. But no, okay. So, all right. We talked a lot about Costigan. We haven't really talked a lot about Sullivan that much.
Yeah, Sullivan. I think have we done another movie with Matt Damon in it?
I'm sure we have.
I'm trying to.
We've talked about a lot of movies, so I would assume it's come up.
I know, man. I'm trying to go backwards, but I love Matt Damon. I think he knows how to play a really good scumbag.
Yeah.
I don't like Sullivan at all.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, you're not supposed to. I think he's the biggest tool and piece of shit ever. And again, I know you're not supposed to, but but the movie does a good job of painting him as, like you said earlier, very charismatic. People seem to like him, and that's what makes me not like him. I'm like, fuck that guy, man.
Yeah, everything seems to be going pretty easy for him, where you see Costigan and he's just going through it. I mean, every scene he's in, he is just in such high anxiety. He is just desperate for people not to find out, and he is trying so hard to gain trust. And yet then you go to Sullivan and, he's getting promoted left and right. He's in a relationship with...
He's getting his own task force with Anthony Anderson.
Right. Like, he's doing very well, and also doing a very good job in giving information to Costello. And he's also in a very unique position where if all of this were to backfire and the mob were to go down, he has a real possibility of getting away with it and keeping his high level job.
Yeah.
So I mean, really, he's doing pretty well for himself. And you're right, that makes it kind of makes you hate him, because it's like, dude, like, why is everything going so well for him? And I think that's why they probably put in the impotency, because, you know, something has to give, you know.
Now, okay, can you explain that? Because I think I missed that.
So there's a line of dialogue with Madeline, Vera Farmiga, where, you know, she said, "Do you want to talk about last night?" It's like, "No." She, you know, "It's really, you know, super common, it happens all the time, blah blah." He's like, "I gotta go." And then they insinuate a few times after that that, you know, he's sort of just like asexual or something, or at least just not interested at that moment.
Okay.
Which is,
Okay. I guess I missed that.
but of course he eventually does or doesn't. That brings up an interesting discussion about whose baby that is, but
it's definitely Billy's.
Yeah, it's probably Billy's. Yeah, but it also makes the line funnier when Baldwin is talking to him about what it looks like from an outsider's perspective for someone in a high level position to be married. And he said, "That or your cock must work." And then, you know, Sullivan doubles down and goes, "Oh, it's working overtime," you know, because he's overcompensating, because no, it's not.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sullivan just seems to have it pretty easy. And of course I love that that difference between the two of them, because it gives monumental tension to what Billy's trying to do. And it's like, man, I think they might win. You know, I think that Sullivan might succeed in whatever the end game is here. And Billy's gonna get found out, and, you know, Jesus, you know.
Well, you know, with that being said, you know, Sullivan does kind of win a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
In a way.
He really does kind of get everything that works out for him, you know?
I mean, yeah, up to a certain point, you're absolutely right, because because Sullivan holds all the cards, really. Because once he finds out that Frank has been an FBI informant for decades, and that's why the feds can't make a case against him, that's why he's been able to get away with all of this stuff for so long, that he goes, well, I control the situation, therefore I can control what information I can and can't give him. And so, you know, he sets that into motion and essentially kills. I mean, he obviously kills Frank himself, literally, but also metaphorically. Like, he ruins that sector of the mob. He takes it down just because he's angry that he wasn't told the full story.
You know, but yeah, which is also kind of funny that it's almost like a son being mad at his dad. Like, well, why didn't you tell me that, Dad?
Yeah, I mean, he is a father figure to Sullivan. So that is absolutely the case, that he feels betrayed, and he feels like his father's let him down. By the way, I don't know if you're familiar with Whitey Bulger. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yes, I do know that is, because I really wanted to see Black Mass.
Oh, yeah.
And I started to watch it, and then I never got a chance to finish it.
It's fine. But Whitey Bulger, he's an interesting guy. he was also the head of a crime syndicate, and he was also an FBI informant, which is why they added that in for Costello's character. It sort of mirrors Whitey Bulger. He was also in Boston. Also,
yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Costello was supposed to be sort of like inspired by Whitey Bulger.
He's sort of a stand-in for Whitey Bulger. But what's so interesting about that piece of information is that makes Costello a rat also. So it's really a story of 3 rats. And just this cat and mouse game of who's going to catch who and who's going to get caught and who's going to get found out. And, it's this movie's fucking great. I know I keep jumping around a lot. It's just because I'm excited, I guess. And I just love this movie much. And anyway, go on.
I was just gonna say, because the movie is fantastic, man. Every scene is tense. You're really rooting for Billy the whole movie. To 1, make it out alive, but also 2, to be able to bring down Costello, because we've learned how dangerous this guy is. Which again, just like with Queenan, makes the first ending so devastating.
Yeah.
That Sullivan finds out who he is, that he's been the rat in the mob, but then thankfully Billy figures out, well, you're Costello's rat working here, so like we found each other out. And I love that it's so triumphant that Billy's like, I'm gonna arrest you, like I'm taking you in, and you think he's gonna do it, especially when Sullivan's facade drops, because the whole time Sullivan is like, fuck you, like between the 2 of us, which one was actually a cop, like. But then I love that Sullivan's mask drops and he's like, man, just kill me, like don't do this, just kill me. And Billy's got that, he's got that goosebumps walk away, I am killing you, because Billy thinks, I'm gonna take him in, I'm going to prove that he's a rat. I've got all this evidence, and then I can be done with this whole mess. I can be done.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with this anymore. And they fucking kill him, dude. Like,
yeah, you're not ready. I mean, when he's in that elevator, you're like, oh, he's got him. We're good. Wow, that was, what? Wow, that was a good movie. That was fun.
yeah, and then those elevator doors open.
Glad we made it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And down it goes. It was that fucking guy, man. That Sullivan's partner. And again, it's one of those moments where Haley was like, is everyone undercover in some way, shape, or form? And I was like, no, but kind of. And, not Anthony Anderson,
which sucks that he gets caught in the crossfire, Now, here's a question.
Sure.
Do you think in that moment, when Sullivan realizes his partner has been on Costello's payroll as well, do you think in that moment he devises the plan of like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and kill him too, and then I can spin this whole thing that he's been the rat the whole time? Or was it more just impulsive?
No, well, I mean, yes and no, because the decision was made so quickly. So I feel like he saw an opportunity and took it. However, here's what I find really interesting is that it seemed like that guy knew that Sullivan was also in with Costello.
Yeah, because he said Costello was going to sell us to the FBI.
But Sullivan didn't know he was with Costello because he seems very surprised. And of course, he has to tell him that, no, I'm with Costello. And so I thought that was really interesting that, Sullivan was left in the dark about something else. Yet people weren't left in the dark about Sullivan, which leads you to believe that, yeah, he was probably going to sell Sullivan out eventually. and sell him to the FBI just like he did everybody else. So I do believe that's correct. I don't think that, that Sullivan was ever safe from the FBI or from Costello selling his information out.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, what a real big piece of shit that he's given his testimony and then he's like, I want to go on record that Billy Costigan deserves the Medal of Merit. Yes, I'm doing the accent.
I know you're doing the accent. That's what I'm laughing at.
But like, what a real big piece of shit. Big piece of shit. Like Billy had you dead to rights, and you kind of in a way got him killed.
Yeah. And
then you're gonna sit there, spin it like that you and Billy had this plan to take down the rat. Like, go fuck yourself, dude.
Yeah. It's, I mean, in a way it could have been worse for Billy, so I do find some solace in, well, his name is cleared at least a little bit. At least it's after death. Mm-hmm. It's fine. He won't go down as some mobster. He does get recognized as an undercover cop, which is fine.
Yeah,
which I like. I thought, oh, thank God. Sullivan got so lucky that other guy outed himself as part of Costello's crew, that he could spin it and it'd be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It just, I would say, out of all the, of course, now having seen this movie multiple times, I see why it was so shocking for my mom to see it.
Oh my God. I can still remember what it was like for me watching it the first time. I mean, you couldn't believe it. I mean, you're like, no, man, I've been following this guy this whole time. He's winning. And there he goes. And I mean, incredible turn of events, because that's not how the original film goes.
I was just about to say, you said at the top of the show that this was a remake.
Yes. It's a Chinese film, Infernal Affairs.
Yep. Now, did you get the Criterion trilogy?
I did not.
Neither have I.
So what's cool about Infernal Affairs is that it spawned a sequel, a prequel, and a television show in China, which is, I mean, it's a hit. There were plans on doing a sequel to The Departed, but it didn't go anywhere. It was going to be about Dingnam during that time. You don't see him, and then afterward.
Oh, dude, I would have paid good money to see that, man.
It would be interesting, but I like the mystery. I like that we don't know anything.
Yeah, that he just kind of he got suspended, falls off the grid, and then we don't see him again until the very end of the movie.
Which, again, another shock. And so much catharsis, because you're like, oh, finally, finally. So, and a couple of things about that. So this is when Sullivan goes back to his apartment. It's been X amount of weeks or whatever, however long it's been.
Yeah, because his face is healed up from all the pistol whipping from Billy.
Yeah. And so it's been, let's say 2 weeks. And he comes up. So in the bag he has are similar groceries to what Costello buys for him as a kid at the store, which I liked. Okay. I like that little callback there. But then of course you got Dingnam in there with his booties and his hazmat or whatever that is. So he leaves no trace behind.
More like a tracksuit. Yeah.
So he leaves no trace. Oh, yeah, that's right. He is wearing a tracksuit. I think he's just wearing gloves and booties. And then he kills Sullivan. Because he knew something was up, and all it took was him doing a little bit of, research without, probably just without due process.
And I'm sure also, when all the news broke about what happened with Billy, and Sullivan was trying to spin it like he knew that, like, the whole time that Billy was their mole. I'm sure Dingham put 2 and 2 together and was like, no, you didn't fucking know the whole time.
Yeah.
Because I've made it specifically known that only me and Queenan know.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I should mention, I did that same video I watched today. They mentioned that the ending, this specific ending, is left open for interpretation, implying, like they said, like, a lot of people have implied that this was Scorsese's way of saying that Dingham is also a rat. And I'm like, no.
I've never thought that once.
Scorsese has let us know from the moment we met this character that he's very loyal to the police department. He is very loyal to bringing down the mob. And yes, this is sort of vigilante justice.
Sure.
But I think this was him of taking one more mob player off the board.
Yeah, I've never once thought about it that way. But that is interesting. I mean, I can see why people would be drawn to that conclusion, but I don't personally believe it. I do agree with you that, he's just, it's vigilante justice. He's just pissed off and he, got his revenge in some sense. Really for Queenan. I think that's really what it's for. I don't think, it's really about Billy. It's more about, he was responsible for Queenan's death. So,
yeah. Well, I did read that he did it like a lot of people interpret it as he did it for Billy and for Queenan, but I think I'm sure for both, but I think more, you're right, I think more for Queenan, because even before, he almost like he knew that Sullivan was the rat. He blamed him for Queenan's death because he was like, why were you having him tailed?
Right.
Like,
right.
Like, why are you having our captain tailed? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So, yeah.
I guess we should probably mention Madeline for a few minutes.
Yeah, we have kind of glazed over.
I know. I feel bad because I do like Vera Farmiga very much. Her character is interesting because she's literally in the middle of these two men, and her character is actually a combination. So it's two different characters in Infernal Affairs. But in this one, they combined them, which I think makes it a little more compelling and a little more interesting. That it's the same person that is having a relationship with these men.
Yeah, because she is sort of caught in a love triangle.
Yeah.
Granted, two of the triangle don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Billy knows she's got a boyfriend. But Sullivan doesn't know, so I guess you could say Sullivan's a cuck. But I mean, he is one, so I mean, there's that. But yeah, no, Vera, dude, she's such an amazing actor.
She's good.
Also, did you know she started a metal band? Apparently,
I did. I wasn't going to bring it up because I have nothing nice to say. So I
Anyway, moving on from that. But yeah, knowing what you just told me about her character being sort of an amalgam of two characters from Infernal Affairs, you're right. It makes it a little bit more compelling. Not saying that Infernal Affairs is not compelling, since I've never seen it, but you're right. It does make it a little more compelling that it is just this one character that these two men are pursuing and falling in love with. And, and there's obviously a clear choice of who she liked better. I would say even before the reveal that she knows that Sullivan's been the rat the whole time for Costello, I was picking up on subtle things that she just wasn't vibing with him at all,
Yeah, sure. I agree. Yeah, not vibing at all. Yeah, she does seem to like Billy a little bit more than she likes Colin, but I don't know. who's to say? I again, I'm sure there's so much more we could say. I'm not so good about stuff like this. Like, I always find the romance stuff in some films not unnecessary but uninteresting. This is a little bit more interesting because of the circumstances that these two men are in, and that she is unknowingly a part of both. Both someone in the mob who's pretending to be a cop, and then someone who's a cop pretending to be in the mob. I think that's compelling and that's interesting. But overall, I mean, it's you know, I don't know. I'm just not good at that type of analysis, I suppose. But
well,
whatever.
I mean, yeah, I will say I do really like the cold shoulder that she gives Colin at Billy's funeral when he asks about the baby.
Of course.
And she's just like, nah, fuck you. Which then again leads me to believe that it's Billy's.
Yeah, I also believe, again, because of the information that we've been, subtly been given about, him being impotent, or him, not just being interested in sexual activity.
Yeah.
So I think that they do, obviously, because there's a chance, but I do think it's Billy's for sure, because that would be one of the only reasons why they would have that scene in there to begin with.
Yeah. Now I have a question for you, buddy.
Okay.
The title of the movie, that has been something with me that I've never understood, the title. Now I know with films, the title doesn't always have to tie back, into something for the film, but it took me up until this rewatch that The Departed, is said in the movie.
Yeah. A couple times.
When Colin says, like, no, The Departed.
Yeah.
So what does it mean?
What does it mean? That's a good question. Well, I don't know. I've never really thought about it too much. I don't know. It just I don't know. Perhaps, in the beginning it shows Costigan talking about his family and talking about, like, how his mother is dying or dead. At that point, when his mother died, he cut off his mother's side of the family, and his father is dead, and so he really doesn't have any connection there either. And those circumstances have sort of brought him to where he is, and so in that case, in his family, the departed family members have thrusted him into the situation that he's in just by chance. That one thing led to another, and here he is. But that might not be right.
Well, I did Google it.
Oh, well then, why am I still talking?
It says it refers to the blurred lines between good and evil, and the corruption that can occur when caught between the two sides.
Interesting.
I still don't know how that ties into the.
Oh no, that makes perfect sense, because of the blurred lines between, right and wrong in their respective positions that they're in. Like, Costigan is having to do some things undercover that he wouldn't obviously normally do,
right,
to be able to get further and further in, and to be able to gain more trust. And then Sullivan, same. He's having to, corrupt the police department from within to be able to gain information for Costigan. You know what I mean? Yet still serving as a police officer. So there is that
Yeah.
sort of gray area there. You know what we haven't fucking talked about yet? French.
Oh, Ray Winston.
Yeah.
Winston, who said that he supposedly him and Jack Nicholson never got along on set.
I believe that probably. But you couldn't tell. They're pros. Man, he is so good, and his character is so mysterious and so interesting and so loyal for the cause. I like that he's sort of calm and collected, and he's sort of, in a way, the exact opposite of Costello. Costello is erratic and spontaneous and scary, and French is scary, but in a cold, calculated sort of way. I don't think he's as unpredictable as Costello. I think he's a lot more level-headed, but it doesn't make him any less scary. I think he's terrifying in his own way. And,
I agree.
But I mean, man, Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson's Costello is so scary. And again, even his acting choices. I mean, in the script, I was told, or not, I was told, not me personally, but I was looking at these videos, and Matt Damon was talking about how there's a shot in the beginning of the film where Jack Nicholson shoots that lady in the back of the head. And he makes that joke, or he, pokes fun that she fell funny.
Yeah.
In the script, he just shoots her, and that's the end of the scene. But then he said, "I want to try something," and then he did it, and then he would just keep adding on every time. And he said he would do that all the time. DiCaprio, there's the scene. There are a few very tense scenes, just full of anxiety in this film. One is the scene I'm about to talk about, which is at the bar, where Nicholson is drawing the rats on the placemat. And then Billy comes to talk to him, and then they, he's trying to suss out if he's the rat, which of course he is, but whatever. DiCaprio didn't know he had the gun, and so when he drops it and he picks it up, DiCaprio didn't know he was going to do any of that, and so he is just as shocked as we are that he's now pointing a gun at him and threatening him with his life. I mean, Nicholson, I guess, is kind of a genius. I don't know, because he just embodies that unpredictability. The other scene, by the way, that is just full of anxiety and so tense is when Sullivan calls him on his cell phone. By the way, I had a flip phone at the time this movie came out. Thank God. It was they make flip phones seem so cool in this movie. The sound design of the opening and closing of these flip phones is so cool. They're like unsheathing a sword, almost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that a little bit.
These phones. But anyway. Okay.
Well, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Are you ready to wrap up?
I am. And we can end with the X's.
Okay.
This film does a lot of really cool things, especially with the editing and the music choices and the sound design and all of that. However, one of the coolest things it does is the not subliminal, but the subtle X's that symbolize death and impending doom. Anytime anyone talks about death, dying, and anytime someone will die in a scene, there is an X somewhere in the background, foreground, shadow, something. Rain, do you have a list of those?
So I found one earlier today that said that there was 18.
It's a lot.
But I'm like, I feel like we would have noticed if there was 18.
Well, no, I mean, there are tons, right? You know, when DiCaprio's at the airport on the moving sidewalk, the windows are lined with X's. There's an X in graffiti on a truck when they're running through the alleyway after they're at the porn theater. And DiCaprio is chasing after Damon. There's an X on one of the trucks. There are X's all over the windows on the waterfront when Queenan dies. There's an X. There's an X made out of duct tape in the elevator behind DiCaprio's head at the end. There's more. There's some shadow X's. I mean, they're everywhere. Tons.
Yeah.
I don't have a comprehensive list.
Yeah.
It's a good deal.
Yeah, but yeah, the first one I saw that said that there was 18 instances of it. Of course, the most famous one is right when Billy dies. There's one right near his head.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're everywhere. So that's a fun little rewatch thing to look out for those. And I think, and this is more controversial than I thought when I was doing my research, is that the rat at the end of the film on the balcony ledge in Sullivan's apartment is somehow controversial. Some people don't like it. That it's a little too on the nose, I think. I disagree. I thought it was great.
I agree.
The rat at the end. I mean, yes, of course it's a little on the nose, but I mean, it's perfect symbolism. Also CGI. I don't know if that needed to be said, but I thought it looked pretty good. So.
Well, I mean, we also did Shutter Island this season. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Or did we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, man. So now it falls on me to say
I fumbled through all that, but we're done.
Nah, I think you did a great job, man. I think it's because we love Scorsese so much that it gets a little hard, I think, to talk about his films because they're so good and they're so layered and there's so many Easter eggs and
Yeah. Maybe.
But so buddy, we were talking about today about what film I was going to pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I did kind of jokingly say, like, maybe I'll lie. Because I was like, I said we were going to talk about this movie. I was like, but I really want to talk about that movie. I don't know. And so literally before we got started, I went to spin the wheel, a customizable one.
Uh-huh.
And I put the 3 movies that I was like, you know what? These are the 3 I want to talk about. And it landed on one. And I was like, okay, well, I guess it's meant to be.
I mean, that's it.
So next week, we are going to be discussing the 1967 French film Le Samouraï.
Cool.
Which I'm assuming is how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
This will be a first watch for the both of us, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't remember how I heard about this film. I'm sure it came up on someone's Criterion in the closet, and they said how truly amazing the film was, and I was like, well, put it on the list. And once I read more about it, that he's a French contract killer, but he has samurai instincts, I'm like, Like, that's kind of cool, actually. I mean, you know. And then, of course, the original Blu-ray cover of the Criterion was pretty cool. I have the 4K, which I think is a little bit more sinister, but still really cool.
I remember hearing about it on a Cinefix list, and they called it one of the coolest movies ever made. So I guess we're in for a very cool movie. I don't know. I guess it's up there with like The Great Escape or something. I don't know. So I'm excited, man. I think this is probably part of the French New Wave movement in the 60s with French filmmakers, which played with linear storytelling and editing style. So that'd be cool. Maybe it's part of that, and that'll be fun to watch. So,
well, you know, I have the Criterion description up, and you know, director Jean-Pierre Melville. They said he uses a cocktail of 1940s American gangster cinema and 1960s French pop culture with a liberal dose of Japanese lone warrior mythology.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
That sounds really cool. It sounds like one of the coolest movies ever made. So maybe they're onto something.
So I know, man. And you know what? And it gives me an excuse to finally crack open that Criterion 4K I bought when we were in Austin.
That's right.
You know, so yeah.
All right, that's exciting.
But yeah. All right, everyone. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode on The Departed, and we will see you next week for Le Samouraï.